Rainy spring days are perfect for reading. So join me as I read 2 books in this rainy springtime vlog. The Middle Grade March group read pick is Moongarden by Michelle Berry. This is a science fiction secret garden, which I love. So the Middle Grade March team has paired this read along with the secret garden. But in this we follow Myra Hajar. Myra is living on the moon. Basically, the plants on Earth became toxic to humans and they all had to leave Earth and find other places to live. And so Myra is currently a student at a school that helps to cultivate magical skills. And so here at the beginning, we're getting a pretty big info dump on how the school works and how the magic system works. There are different kinds of magical skills that people are kind of grouped into. And you go to this school as you're coming of age. And if your specific magical skill develops, then you stay at the school, you kind of get initiated, you then have to wear a specific uniform based on what your skill is. If your skill does not come out, then you end up leaving the school. So Myra is a first year student, so she's getting to wear whatever she wants, and it kind of seems like she's getting to do whatever she wants because as we open up this book, she is skipping class. She ends up sneaking in for an assembly that they have for the whole school is a mandatory assembly, and then when everybody else goes back to class, she again chooses not to go back to class. And it sounds like how she spends her day is just kind of exploring this school building. It sounds enormous. It sounds like it has a lot of kind of hidden or old areas that Myra's able to go in and kind of spend her day doing that and not being found. What we learned at the assembly was that they are doing some new food experiments, and so everybody needs nutrition from this food, but it may not look very good. They're hoping that they can replicate good taste and good texture. But this is obviously a society of people whose food is chemically manufactured. So we already know that there is a potentially food scarcity issue in this school and in this society. By the 3rd chapter, we have Myra who accidentally falls into this apparently secret and non-used lab area. And she kind of realizes that there's something unusual about this lab, but all of a sudden she hears a lot of beeping and noise and she discovers this robot. The robot is really cute. It can't speak English. It just makes different noises. It's like R2-D2. And she names it Binro. So far, it's very intriguing. Again, there is a big dump on how the world is set up, but that's important because we're on the moon and we kind of need to know these details. One of the things that I find surprising about this is it actually on the cover and even on the back, it has a quote to kind of support the novel by Victoria Aveyard, who wrote The Red Queen, which is a very well-known YA fantasy. I just find it interesting that for a comp author that they chose Victoria Aveyard. I love The Red Queen and that series. It was very original for its time. So it very much is a core component of YA fantasy in the early 2000s. In addition to reading Middle Grade in March, I am also reading the 3rd book in the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. And the reason why I thought it would be great to include this book in this vlog is because even though I am reading the 3rd book in this series, the first 2 books are very slim. And so you can easily catch up. Catch up to what, you might say? Well, I've heard a lot about this series, but I was a little intimidated because there's already, I think, 8 volumes in this, which seems really long. And this isn't going to be finished in the near future. But Jen at Jen's Reading Life is doing a read-along each month. We read 1 volume of this, which here at the beginning has been very manageable because the first 2 books are very slim. But you could just jump right into that read-along and get to know Emma Lyon as well. When we begin in the first volume of the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, we discover that Emma is living in a house called Lapis Lazuli. And there's an odd arrangement going on where she has a relative who is living there. He seems to be living on all the main floors. He seems to have access to her finances, and she is living in a garret of the house. And it's not very comfortable. She's kind of pilfered furniture from different parts of the house to try to make it a little bit more comfortable. We also discover that she has a dearth of books because there was a very stressful situation in which she has lost her books, and so she is collecting one book at a time. One of the things that's really cute about this is the beginning of the book. Beth Brower gives us a list of characters so that we kind of know who everyone is. And then at the end of the book, she gives us a tally of here's where we stand with how many books Emma M. Lyon has been able to collect in this volume. We discovered that there is obviously past bad blood with her family, hence this person that's living in her house. She does have a couple staff who work in the house, one of whom is loyal to her, one of whom is loyal to her arch nemesis family member. We also discovered that there is a past trauma in her love life where she has lost someone that she loved. And we don't know that much about it, but we know that it is a source of pain. She also has an aunt who is her benefactress for their own specific reasons, not necessarily to benefit Emma, but it does benefit Emma. And so that is kind of how we are able to not only see Emma's life within living in this house, but then also her getting out and meeting people and being in places of influence. So it's written in a journal form. I love that epistolary novel connection, and it really does feel very intimate into Emma Lyon's inner monologue and workings, and so you just feel very connected to her. One of the aspects to this novel that I have enjoyed is the descriptions of Emma's home life. We see Emma taking tea quite often and having her staff making her little meals. And so I thought it would be fun to make tea and make a little treat to have to celebrate starting this third volume. I decided to make raspberry pinwheels for tea time. I used puffed pastry, divided it out accordingly, and put notches on each of the corners so that I could peel every other corner down. And I remembered that I had whole frozen peaches in the freezer. Did you know that you can store them for anywhere from 6 to 12 months? I had some left over from last fall that I put in the freezer, and I decided to get them out. They're actually a lot easier to peel after they've been frozen. So I peeled them, I cut them into small pieces, and I decided to add them into the pinwheels once I had gotten the jam and the peaches put into the center. They baked in the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes and came out delicious. All right, so I have made it to July 24th, which means 23 days since this started on July 1st. And while I have sensed Emma's sense of humor in the first two volumes, in this third volume, we open up with, and I don't think this is a spoiler, But apparently in this town that they're in St. Crispin's, which Emma loves, it has these little idiosyncrasies throughout the town. But one of the things that it does is on the 1st of July, the town has tickets to a secret play. You basically have to collect clues and do a scavenger hunt, talking to all these different people. Somebody, if you get the clue right, they'll then lead you to the next person who then gives you a clue. And it is so funny. It really does put you into contact with a lot of your favorite characters in the town as well as new characters. And it's just such a creative way for you as the reader to be able to travel through the town, to get to know all of the people, and also, again, to see Emma's sense of humor and also just how plucky of a main female heroine she actually is. I am about halfway through Moongarden at this point. I did do a little bit of research. I read the acknowledgments in the back of the book, and it talks about Victoria Aveyard being Michelle's cousin. That's why the author of Red Queen is quoted on this book, because I did think, even though they're both fantasy, it just seemed like an unusual pairing, but it's because they're cousins. So I think it's great that Victoria Aveyard supports her cousin. I also learned that this is the first book in a trilogy. So I find that interesting because I think as this is set on the moon, I think the next books move into different planets. So I think that would be interesting. So one of the things about this book is there's not a lot of details on how it is that the society has been able to live on the moon. So at one point, our main character, Myra, goes somewhere accidental, like the secret garden, and she's concerned that she's outside. And she's like, can I breathe? Okay, I can breathe. So there's obviously a structure in place so that people can live and go to school on the moon, but we don't get a lot of detail in that. I think the secret garden aspect is really phenomenal. There actually are other characters that are involved in the secret garden, but so far there's no one from what I can tell, that is like similar to Colin or Dickon. So there are actually two characters in the Secret Garden that I love, and so I'm kind of missing that piece. The Robin also is a character in the original Secret Garden that I love, and there actually is a little robot called Beirut who, to me, seems like it's playing the role of the Robin. So that part I really love so much. There are some fairly high stakes in this. There is a cover-up that is happening at a pretty high level. Our main character, Myra, learns about it pretty quickly and is sworn to secret. And so we also get the feeling that there are other mysteries going on because a few of the characters that connect her up with the Secret Garden are implying that there is a history there and that there's a connection there that we haven't quite put together. I have a little bit of a theory about that, so we'll see if it plays out. I have finished the third Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I do want to reiterate that picking this up right now to kind of catch up with Jen's read along is totally doable because, again, these first few volumes are not super thick and you really do get pulled along by the journal entries. So I know sometimes people can say that having an epistolary novel that's a journal lacks continuity. So the only thing kind of keeping it together is the fact that we're just going day to day rather than having there be a pretty strong plot. But I think with Emma's journals, you're definitely pulled along in time. And the thing that I love that Beth Brower does is she also marks time with pegs that relate to the past. So reminding us that this is the date that she lost a former lover. This is the date that, is her parents' birthday. And so you're continually kind of reminded in what Emma Lyon is rooted and based in, but then the hijinks that she gets herself into are just so humorous. You just can't help but laugh.
I do think there's a part of her that one could feel a little bit like she's smug. I think Beth Brower writes her in such a way that you're just reminded almost immediately of her humility, and kind of being able to laugh at herself. So, just an entertaining story. So, as I mentioned, the first half of the book is about the Julius Caesar getting the tickets. And so she's kind of like running all over town, which is funny and again is very plot driven. The second half of the book is not so plot driven. It's much more character driven. We see her getting to know the tenant who has moved into like the smaller side house, unpacking kind of what his career is and what his connections are. We also are seeing more of young Hawks, whom we do meet in the first volumes. He is the local pastor of the parish in St. Crispin's, and he's very mysterious. Like, she always describes when he comes to church in the morning, first of all, he reads poetry. So she says after the older gentry fall asleep, he then reads poetry and not necessarily like scripture. And she always talks about him looking rumpled and tired in the morning. And so you are kind of wondering, like, what is he doing at night? She kind of runs into him in odd situations where you're like, why is he there? He's very sporadically sprinkled throughout the first few volumes. And it feels the same way in this third volume where he's around, he's there, he's intriguing, but he's not at this point one of the main characters. So we continue to see her aunt, who's her benefactor, for the benefit of Arabella, who's her cousin. Emma's supposed to be Arabella's foil, so making Arabella look beautiful and smart and wise. Then Emma kind of play acts to kind of be like this goofy cousin is the plan that her aunt has for her. And so that's continuing on in this third book. But we do meet some new characters. So we are getting to know better Duke Islington, who is sort of this, when you have like the grumpy sunshine romance relationship, he's definitely grumpy, but he does seem to find Emma to be amusing and entertaining. And we definitely learn more about him as well. So while romance doesn't seem to be on Emma's mind, in fact, she seems to really be avoiding it at all costs, we're definitely as readers being shown that like there are men who are in Emma's kind of peripheral circle who maybe are interested or that maybe she could be interested in, and we're kind of getting to know them. So I don't know how long this goes on where we're sort of feeling like, well, is that person an option? I'm not the biggest fan of love triangles, but she being Emma Lyon, she does seem to really just be seeking friendship. And so I am trying to read it as kind of just a friendship connection and getting to know the characters and seeing how it pulls out different characteristics of Emma. Cousin Archibald in this story is also still around, but a little bit off to the side. But his vitriol against Emma is just really concerning. And so again, that brings some tension into the story that just makes it uncomfortable. Like, you kind of feel like Emma's been through a lot. She's now, though, like trying to find ways to kind of come out of the difficulties that she's been in, but the cousin does not like her. And it just, again, it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable for Emma. I will say we are a little bit more concerned in the other first two books about Emma's finances. We're not really hearing a lot about that. So I don't know if renting the space to a tenant has really kind of eased that up for her, or if we will continue in the next volume of volume 4 in April of kind of seeing her trying to generate a little bit more revenue to be able to put into the bank as savings. We did see Emma increase the books in her library. So that is always a humorous thing. And I always love to see how Beth Brower kind of pulls that in, where she manages to win a lottery or be given books. Anyway, I love the humor in this. I love the mystery that we're continually shown with this past lover, where you just kind of feel like there's something more there. We're just not sure what. I am all in on this series and really am grateful to Jen for kind of encouraging this read along. To bring the rest of us up to speed for when the next book comes out in the fall. And I am excited then to get into April and to read the 4th installment of this series. So I have finished Moongarden by Michelle Berry. And while I enjoyed it, one of my slight frustrations is that nothing has really been resolved in this book. So I realized that with certain series, that happens where it's not been resolved. But I do feel like with a middle grade book, you really should have some things wrapped up, and then the next book kind of introduces a new dilemma. I just feel like, again, with the middle grade audience, having that closure, I think is important. You have different levels of readers, different access to books. So when I checked my library, the second book in this series they do have, but the third book they don't. So even if I continued this series, I would have to figure out how to procure the third one. And I don't think it resolves within the second book. All of that to say, Michelle Berry has set up a very interesting plot in that the food source for all of the people on all the planets and on the moon, all of those societies, the food source is having an issue. And so it's being covered up. And the director of this school, he's part of the cover up. He has agreed that he's not going to say anything. And they are now having to have this food, these like weird food bars that you get the feeling at the end people are not eating as much, so they're like not as hungry, and so you're wondering like, are they getting the nutrients they need? But that concept of there being a cover-up because the food source is having an issue and they're having to do something different to manufacture it is not resolved in this book. In fact, the director continues to lie, and our female main character, Myra, also has to continue to lie. And they're sort of complicit in this story. So they're like telling half-truths to her parents, other friends of Myra that she develops who are all in on all of her secrets are also not aware of it. And so I think that part kind of bothers me, that like we don't have a next step in that. It's just she's agreed with this director that she's going to lie about it. We have discovered some things that are related to her friends, some secrets that have been hidden, and they're really horrific secrets. There were aspects of this book that I really did like. So I know I mentioned earlier that we didn't really get into the like how they're living on the moon, the like logistics of not being able to breathe, like what does that look like? But we did get a very detailed description of the magic system that is in this book. And so there are multiple Kriers, which is different magical skills. So you can be a number whisperer, you can be a mender, which is the people who do the healing. There are electors who can manipulate electricity. And so you see how each of the kids, like one of Myra's friends is a mender, one of her friends is an elector. There's also the people apparently who have an affinity towards plant magic. But again, because plants are seen as dangerous, those people are not accepted into society. And so seeing how all of that magic relates, and also seeing the discrimination within the society where like the number Kriers are thought that they're the best, and you see the botany Krier, which is the plant magic, that they are looked down upon and they're not allowed to even tell people that that's what they are. There's definitely this kind of caste system, and I find that intriguing as well. I definitely looked into reading the next book in the series Supposedly, they then go to Venus as like a school abroad kind of a thing. Myra then comes across more involved in this cover-up. I think we also see a connection with past friendships that she had to end for a variety of reasons, some of which are like betrayal, and so she's like probably going to have to go back and face that. So I do think this is a really great book. I'm just concerned about the fact that there seems to be more going on that isn't resolved within this first one, and it would require that I would have to read the rest of the series, and I'm not even sure if I can get that third book easily. But I am really looking forward to the discussion time that the Middle Grade March Readalong will be doing at the end of the month. I will be sure to put that information down below, and we can see at that time what other people who joined the read-along thought.
Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.